Production funding is provided by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota, the North Dakota Council on the Arts, the Bush Foundation, and the members of Prairie Public.
On this edition of Prairie Mosaic, we'll showcase a German baron who traveled the prairies painting lifelike murals in many of our region's churches. Profile one of the area's leading patrons of the arts. Hear a traditional song and visit a showcase and storehouse of the region's history. But first, we'll visit Walter Piehl Jr.'s studio in Minot, North Dakota. Walter Piehl energetically uses acrylic on canvas and paper, treating Western Americana themes with modern art influences and interpretation. His work, often large in scale, has been exhibited across North America.
But I think there needs to be a sort of consistency. Sometimes I'm an artist-teacher, sometimes I'm a teacher-artist. Maybe the pineapple will be so powerful it doesn't matter. Teaching has allowed me to paint what I want, when I want, and how I want. One of the things that I did for my entertainment was draw as a very, very small child. Drawing and imagery always did interest me, and so when it came time to think about going to college, and I wanted to go to college because I wanted to get out of the haystack. I knew there was more world out there, and even though I loved the horse angle, the cattle angle of where I was at, I wanted something more. One of the instructors said, "We hear that you go to rodeos on weekends." And I said, "Yeah, my family's involved in rodeos, this, that." He said, "Well, why aren't you using that as a subject matter?" My reply was, I didn't think it could work. I thought cowboys were inappropriate. They're too romantic. They're too full of adventure in a bad way. He said, "No, that's not true. Any subject is appropriate. And if you want to paint that, you should paint that. But you have to find your own voice. You have to find your own way." The part about rodeo that was the most obvious to me was the action part. The bucking horses, the bucking bulls, the dynamics of horse and rider. And so I looked to the Italian futurist group of the early 1900s. They took Cubism and they applied it to moving subjects. Then also I looked to the abstract expressionists, the action painters. The way in which the artist applies the paint to the canvas is important to the look of the finished work. The energy that the artist brings to the paint application should also be communicated to the viewer in the end. And so when I paint, I want people to look at it and say, "Wow, it looks like he did that application of paint with big brushes and a lot of energy," which hopefully enhances the movement of the subject also and the energy of the subject. Paint is a fluid medium. It drips and it splatters, and those aren't collateral damage. Drips and splatters oftentimes are collateral enhancements. Sometimes accidents are bad accidents, but sometimes the accident is the best thing that can happen to a painting. I no longer really paint in a futurist, cubist style, but I do use some of the same devices that the cubists and the futurists use, which would be multiple imagery. 1, 2, 3, 4. I might have a horse with 6, 8, 10 legs, 2 or 3 heads that might be visible in here as this horse is moving through space, as the rider is moving through space. The process involves a chalk drawing with colored chalk. I'll do a basic composition. After that, I will go into it with a dark, linear painted outline of that, to refine that a little bit, to make changes, to give myself something to go by, something that will still show through the first applications of paint. And then Generally speaking, I go to the most fun part, that really spontaneous primary application of paint, where I am applying paint with great abandon, where the energy, most of the energy, will come into the canvas. Then I let that dry, then I go back into it and see what I can do to resolve it, to get rid of the bad stuff, keep the good stuff. After that, it's mostly fine-tuning adjustments. As this rider moves through space, we'll see this green repeating. I like polka dots and I like angular patterns on shirts for my riders. They add action. I want to see details in my paintings, but I want them to be very, very abstract in the same way. I don't like the idea that somebody could walk to the painting the first time and just identify everything in there. I want them to find the paintings reveal themselves as they look at them several times, perhaps. Well, do you see any of the image in this one, folks? My favorite paintings that I do are ones that are more abstract. But my tendency to be fussy, I think, causes me many times to go back and work on paintings more than I should. I take them too far. Some parts of it I might have gone a little too far, and I may regret it a little bit now, but in the end it may be just fine. Oftentimes as a painter and as a teacher, you have to talk to students about knowing when to quit on a painting. I have no doubt you can probably take it and make a really nice painting out of it, but it is a really nice painting right now. They have such a strong mental image of what they think this thing is to look like that they give up some wonderful, fresh, spontaneous, simple images to begin with. You have to recognize when you have something that's good and stop on it at that point, even if it doesn't match that mental image that you have for an idea of what I want to do in this painting. Taking a painting too far is the easy thing. Recognizing when to stop on it, that's the difficult part of it.
The distinctive roof of the Yamkampf Center is just the first of many surprises that await visitors to the Heritage and Cultural Center of Clay County. This unique museum on the banks of the Red River provides a glimpse into the rich history of our region.
We've got 4 floors of exhibits of interest to a wide range of people. We've got lots to offer everybody on every floor. In Heritage Hall, we have historical exhibits focusing on the Red River Valley. This time we have a wonderful exhibit by Flayton and Wang, who were 2 Norwegian photographers who immigrated at the turn of the last century and then photographed people in our region. It's a wonderful exhibit.
It's the combined collections of 2 photographers who worked here in Clay County, each for about 50 years or more. It's a tremendous collection, 15,500 glass plate negatives taken between 1879 and about 1940 or 45 or so. The collection is huge, but it's got such great depth. It's great to look back and see what the communities looked like in those times.
We have the Hopperstad Stave Church, which was built 11 years ago, a wonderful replica of a medieval Stave church. Of course, up in the ship gallery, we have the very famous Hjemkomst Viking ship replica. This is the Hjemkomst, which is a replica of a Viking ship, and it actually sailed to Norway in 1982. After the ship came back, it came back in a freighter, and it was put in storage until this building was built. In 1986, this building was completed. The back wall hadn't been put in yet, and the roof wasn't on. The ship was brought in on a trailer, and then they built the back wall, and they dropped the roof on top, and it's been in here ever since. Right now we're standing in the Clay County Historical Society Gallery. The Historical Society has a 77-year history now, And people have been donating personal items, business items, all kinds of paper records and photographs for many, many years. And we have an extensive collection, over 30,000 artifacts that are of historical nature, all focusing primarily on Clay County. The curator and the archivist have pulled these items out for a specific exhibit focused on this theme.
The things that I'm standing with right now were donated by one of our longtime supporters, Charlotte Onstein. This is her wedding dress, and it's not the typical white wedding dress. She also gave us her hope chest that her mother had had made for her. Her mother had been saving wooden spools and had the spools split in half and decorated the hope chest with the wooden spools. Charlotte also gave us some of the accompanying items from her wedding ceremony: the cake topper, the candy box, the blue scarf of her mother's with some of the rose petals from her own bouquet. She also gave us the recipe for the groom's cake that they had for their wedding. So it's an assortment of items that really tell the story of her wedding and personalize it with those, not just the wedding dress, but also items that went along with it.
We don't automatically take donations. In fact, we're calling a moratorium on the wedding dresses, I think, because we have so many. What we are looking for are, what are some of the gaps in our collection that we need to fill? Right now, we're actually looking for items from the 1960s. I know when people think of history, they think pioneer or much older, but history actually is going on all around us.
We are in some of our collection storage right now where we keep the bulk of our artifact collection. We have over 35,000 artifacts in our collection, so we can't possibly display all of them all at the same time. And it's actually not a good idea to keep historical artifacts out on display for forever, because light is one of the most damaging elements. The dolls here were used in one of the earliest PBS series that was broadcast, the story of Red River Land, which was written by Erling Rolfsrud.
They were the people who brought the first tourists to Minnesota. He might wear a shirt.
They set up dioramas and told the stories, you know, and made little scenes with the dolls.
Across the stream, they took the wheels off.
And the dolls were made by a local woman whose name is Mildred Heifert, and they were made specially for that television program.
Box, and they got across with the contents dry. So these were the carts which they used on those Pembina hunts.
On the fourth floor, we have art exhibits. Starting in January, we'll have a woman's perspective, we'll have the FM area visual artists exhibit, and we'll have the Red River Watercolor Society exhibit in the summer. And we also have traveling exhibits. We commit every 3 or 4 months, we change traveling exhibits here. We always try to get really high quality traveling exhibits from very interesting places such as the Smithsonian, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Endowment for the Arts, usually focusing on culture or history of interest to a wide range of people. We've got lots to offer everybody on every floor.
Born into an aristocratic German family, Baron Berthold von Imhoff fell in love with the prairie on a hunting trip. A classically trained painter, he turned many prairie churches into works of art.
We have people come here from all over the world, and they can't figure out what this art is doing out here in the middle of nowhere. Did he donate pictures to churches in Saskatchewan? Definitely. A lot of churches he did for free of charge. My grandfather originally came from Germany. From Germany, he immigrated to Reading, Pennsylvania. From Reading, Pennsylvania, at his late 40s, he moved up here to St. Walter, Saskatchewan. He came up here on a hunting trip with some people he knew, and there was inexpensive land up here at that time. So he bought land, and he liked the area, and he moved up here.
They moved in 1914. He hired other people to work his land and to break it because he wasn't a farmer. He was an artist, and that's all he did.
He decorated a lot of churches. He was trained in art schools in Halle and Dusseldorf in Germany. Most of his work was done in the States, in the Dakotas, and mostly around Pennsylvania. The list we have of all the churches he did was over 90. But obviously he did a lot more than that because there are some churches that he did that we haven't got lists of.
We were at the Imhoff studio, the working gallery of my husband's grandfather, Berthold von Imhoff. He started all these paintings in charcoal first, and then he would put 3 coats of oil. And he also only painted by the north light because he also had to mix his own colors. He couldn't buy the colors that he used at that time. That's why all the windows in this studio are on the north side, and he could get the true colors that way.
When they would contact him to do a church, he had numerous amounts of small paintings. Like you see them all around the side over here. He'd take those with him, and they would pick out what they wanted in a church, and then he would paint it in life size. All the pictures that he did were done right in this building. And then they would take him down to the church and then put up, unless it was a curved area like over an altar or a curved dome or something, then the canvases were put up and they were painted right in the building, right there. Even though they lived up here in Saskatchewan, they would go back to the States and do projects. When they did the large church in Reading, Pennsylvania, they moved down there.
We're in the St. Peter the Apostle Roman Catholic Church. This is undoubtedly Berthold Imhoff's masterpiece. At the top of the ceiling here are 224 life-sized figures processing towards the altar. In the sanctuary, we see St. Paul preaching to the peoples of the East and St. Peter preaching to the peoples of the West. Berthold received a commission from St. Peter's Church to paint this procession of saints, and he did this at his studio in St. Walburg, Saskatchewan, and put the paintings on a train, and he and his son Carl came down here and installed the paintings in approximately the mid-1920s.
When he moved up here, yeah, he was well off. But everything he made in churches, he would put back in his canvases. He painted when he didn't have commissions. All the ones you see in here today, he just painted to paint. No sale for him. He never did sell a picture. He never painted a picture to sell. It was just churches that he was commissioned to do.
In the United States, he did very well. Everything he had, he paid for with the work of his artwork. Much of the work that he did in the churches in Saskatchewan, often they were donated. It was important to him that they had something that reminded them maybe of their homeland, because a lot of these were European people, and the churches were decorated beautifully there, and so he would give them a gift that way, a reminder of their homeland. And also even in worship, it was the art helped them because it drew them to thinking of things that were, say, removed from everyday life. A decoration from the Pope came in 1937. He was knighted with the knighthood of St. Gregory the Great. It was befitting that knighthood was bestowed on him because St. Gregory the Great was noted for his charity. He used his wealth to the good of everybody. When he died, he was not well off at all. He was, in fact, very poor. And so for helping with Mrs. Imhoff, his wife, gave a painting to the undertaker because there was no money. He was a very spiritual person, and I wouldn't say so much religious as very faithful. He had a faith, and he had a goodness in him. I mean, he had to have given so much not only in his artwork, but in other charity too. Like if somebody was hard up, he would help them out, and that was not known until after he died.
For many years, James ORourke has helped area artists launch their professional careers. Two of these artists talk about the pivotal role James has played in the development of the region's arts community.
You know, it's been, you know, again, tremendous for my career and what it has done for me in terms of, you know, publicity. When I've gotten contacted from many, you know, state publications, and I've gotten media attention because of exhibits at the ORourke. And so the first thing we'll do is we'll just slam this ball down in the middle of the wheel, and the first step is going to be to get it centered. So I'm going to put a little bit of water on here. I'm going to press down on the clay. Yeah, with Jim at the Gallery and Museum, all works are generally for sale. I mean, you may have a couple pieces that were not for sale or purchased previously or belong to another collector or something that you can show, but largely, you know, my work is for sale there, and oftentimes within, you know, after the opening weekend, he might have sold half of the works in an exhibit. So we've certainly had, you know, good luck. Working with Jim and the ORourke Art Gallery Museum has been a tremendous benefit to my career. There's no doubt about it. This year this upcoming fall, we'll be installing our 10th annual show. So for 10 years in a row, I've worked with Jim, and again, sometimes at the gallery and sometimes at the museum. But what it does for you is it adds a certain amount of validity and credibility to what you do, and it certainly pushes you. You know, I have to be developing a new body of work, and I can't be showing the same things over and over. I don't know if people really understand the incredible impact that Jim has had on the art scene in the entire region. You know, having initially worked with the Plains Art Museum and then the ORourke over the past many decades, he's literally been the person who has jump-started and given opportunities to many artists who certainly, you know, needed it.
Some of the artists, I suppose, that we've exhibited over the years obviously are much more important now. You know, you obviously you'll be trying to exhibit the finest artists that live in the Fargo-Moorhead area, particularly, and then the Red River Valley, and then we move out to western Minnesota and North Dakota, sort of our general area, where most of our members come from, and also where the artists that have one-person shows here.
I put down some of these shapes on these panels, glue them down, and then usually paint them a single color, and then I begin adding colors one layer at a time.
What he's done really is he's developed a following of people who are really committed to that museum. People who donate their time, donate money, donate energy. It's tremendously important. What's that expression about selling? Somebody said this about selling books. You throw them at the wall and see what sticks. And he sort of throws the artist at the wall and sees what sticks. I mean, Brad is an example of somebody whose work he can sell. Once you get somebody whose work he can sell, you show them once a year, you know, indefinitely. But in between that, he'll take a chance on artists who's may have a big reputation, may have no reputation at all.
We have a strong commitment to artists of our time and place. We've done this from the day we opened. I think that museums are sort of doing a disservice to their artists in their own community if they do not exhibit their work.
Fort Berthold, North Dakota, Native American musician and storyteller Keith Baer treats us to a song.
Oh, my honey, don't you know that I'll be with you tonight? We'll go walking by the water, we'll hold hands in the moonlight. Way I ha ya ha de oh yo ha de oh ya he do. Way I ya ha de oh yo ha de oh ya he do. Out down by the river where the water flows cold and clear, I'll whisper sweet words to you, honey, words you want to hear. Way I ha ya ha de oh yo ha de oh ya he do. ya hare o yo hare o ya hero. Honey, in the evening when the sweet grass smells so strong, go walking by the willows, honey, there I'll lay you down. Way I ha ya hare o yo hare o ya hero. Way I ya hare o yo hare o ya hero. Honey, don't you know that I'll be with you tonight? We'll go walking by the water, we'll make love till morning light. Way I ha ya hare o yo hare o ya hero. Way I ya hare o yo hare o ya hero. Way ho ya hero. Way ho ya hero.
Production funding is provided by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota, the North Dakota Council on the Arts, the Bush Foundation, and the members of Prairie Public.